Hello, everyone. My name is Karl Lentini. This is the Men of Law podcast. Men of Law is a movie, feature film that I directed and co-wrote and co-produced, and it deals with the subject of human trafficking. A young girl is kidnapped and her family does their own investigation. And so to help us understand the real issue, the realities of human trafficking, we have a gentleman here today who, right here in beautiful, bright Austin, Texas, visiting us on a gorgeous day, Joe Martinez. So I'm honored and really privileged to be able to talk to him and get into his background and experience. So, welcome, Joe. Thank you for being here.
Well, man, thanks for the invite. I mean, it's a great thing to do. I mean, to be able to bring the word out it's more of an underworld kind of thing. It's a very depressing kind of thing, really, when people come to this country. You know, I was born and raised here in Austin, grew up on the east side of Austin, where people back in the day when I was a kid, people didn't cross the Interstate 35 because that was for those people. There was a black and the Hispanics were industrial area back there. We even had our own school built for us in that part of town. There was a huge vacant field. Somebody owned some property back there, and they cut a road and built a high school for you people. So you begin to realize that what that word meant. The culture that you speak of is directed to people that come from other countries. They come from their country. They come from a poor country. They come in either singles or families, but they come to America to for a better life. But when they get across and you hear all this word of the cartels and control, and sure, it's a controlled movement from that country. From whether you come from Nicaragua, or you come from Brazil, Argentina, China, Iran, Iraq, it doesn't matter. Ethiopia, it doesn't matter where you come from. You have to pay the toll. Where do you get the money to get here is my question. You know, there's thousands of miles from the southern border of Mexico to the Texas border. You're not going to walk 1,000 miles. You got brand new shoes on, you got a brand new cell phone, nice backpack, and you've been fed. How do you get here? This is a mystery to me, because I've never been over there and come through their country. Because as an American citizen, you travel to these nice places. My late wife and I used to travel to Mexico quite a bit, all the resorts. And you see the people working in these hotels. But they want the same life you have. But the barrier, the problem is that they don't speak English. They're not taught English in high school or at school. They're taught their culture. It's been that way for years. So they make the movement to the north. They get to the river. Somebody's going to cross them. Children. You know, speaking of children, I've heard some of the names or numbers that they've used during the mass immigration into this country, the invasion. 365,000 missing children is the number that they throw out there.
And these are children who were brought over the border.
Well,
do we know that?
These are children that came with somebody. And they may have barred the family, because it's easier to get across with a family member, it's little ones, than it is to adults. So is a revolving door with these kids? Would they use them for somebody else? And they were documented somewhere, but they can't find them. You know, this immigration problem has been a problem for a long, long time. It's not this president, the last president, the president before that. It's been a problem. Nobody seems to want to address this problem.
Are there children who are hired out, basically, that just because you have husband and what appears to be a husband and wife with children, does that mean it's really their children, or?
You don't know. They don't come with papers.
Yeah.
In this country, we're identified with the birth certificate. I don't, in different, think about it. You have a small community in the jungle, and I've seen them, where there's little huts, and there's 20, 30 people that live in this little village alongside the road. In the road, there's a transportation to the market. Whatever they have, they'll stand on the side of the road and take it to market. How do you know how many people were born there, or how many people have passed away, or how many people have left? There's no documentation. So you come without papers. Now, when you had the immigration in the early part of the 19th century with the Italians and people from Europe, some came with papers and some didn't. But they were all addressed and identified as somebody from somewhere. You just don't get here and not have any kind of identification. So, this is, the Americans take everybody in. They'll give you the opportunity, which is a fair thing to say. But let's go back to the small community. Mom and a dad have 4 or 5 kids. So, and I've heard and I've seen some of this. Some of the young girls, 13, 14 years old, are turned into prostitution on that side of the border. There's a place called Boys Town in Laredo. It's not boys. It's grown men going across the border to have sex with these young women. People turn out their children because that's the only way they're going to make any money.
So women or girls?
Young girls, 13 years old, 12 years old. You see them on the streets. They don't have a job. There's nothing for them to do, but they're turned out by their own family because that's the only way they're going to survive.
Right.
Every once in a while, they cross into the United States, and there's these men's clubs. What is the difference? They're turned out to dancers. They're turned out as prostitutes. Where's the money going? Going back home. So back to the question is, if you come across with 3 children and you have a wife, but you can't prove anything, what a deal.
Right.
But then the kids go off, she goes off, and everybody goes off into the country.
Yeah, they just kind
of weave into the country.
Right.
Where are you going to go from there? Well, then there's somebody waiting on the other side that's willing to give you a ride for some money to take you somewhere.
Right.
San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Chicago, New York. Why not? You're on your own. But say you land in Austin. Austin is booming with construction right now. They'll take you anywhere for hire. They'll hire young men that are willing to work 5, 6, 7 days a week, rebuilding the roads, building new buildings, apartment complexes. They're springing up everywhere. There's not a place in Austin you can't go that you can go that there's not a new apartment complex built in the middle of nowhere. Where's this money coming from? Surely the banks must be flooded with money to be able to loan this kind of money out. Somebody's making a killing.
Now, just talk a little bit about your background in law enforcement, just so we have an idea of
where I come from.
Yeah.
I was born and raised here in Austin. I was a migrant worker at the age of 13, 14 years old. I come from a large family myself. I have 8 brothers and 2 sisters. And as a group, right after school, May 31, school was out. We'd all gather up, everything would be packed, the trailer would be hitched up to the car, and we'd head north. I was the second eldest, out an older brother. And we had a place. We started out, say like on Monday or Tuesday right after school, or Sunday, didn't matter. All the days were the same. And we'd head up to southern Michigan. We'd land in southern Michigan or in Benton Harbor, St. Joe, and pick strawberries on your hands and knees.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for about 3 weeks. Then we'd pack up and head further north in Michigan. Usually up around Traverse City, Hart, Michigan. It was a cherry season, either sweet cherries or sour cherries. And we'd tackle that for about 2 or 3 weeks. Then we'd come back down into some little town called Holland, Michigan. And they had blueberries. Anything that needed to be picked, we could pick it because you had 2 good hands. We'd stay there for about, August into second, third week of August. Then we'd head south to Ohio. We had a farm that we contracted with. They had 25 acres of tomatoes that they planted for Campbell's Soup Company. The family would land there. We'd pick 25 acres of tomatoes, August and into late September for about a month. We'd pick, 1,500 to 2,000 bushels of tomatoes a day.
So you live the life of the migrant worker.
Yes.
When we talk about people coming here from other countries to pick berries and do these hard labor jobs, you did that. You lived that.
I did.
Yeah.
But back then you didn't see the number of people coming to this country. We every once in a while, the people would come by and they were known as hobos, people that lived on the rail, and they would come by and ask for work. And sometimes they'd get hired on, and sometimes not, because they were looking for money too. Yes, I actually did the work. I actually was on my hands and knees and did all the work. I know. And
at some point, you're like, I want to stop doing this. I want to do something else.
I got married at an early age, like 20 years old. And that was my way out. The family continued to go north.
Yeah.
I stayed here. I had a job with the gas company here in Austin back in the 60s. Graduated from high school and had a child and a wife. I was making $1.35 an hour, connecting new services to new homes, connected to the main line running under the ground. I said, this is not what I want to do. One day I came home after 2 weeks. I got paid every 2 weeks, $117 take home pay. And with that, you had to support the family, pay rent and gasoline and whatever. Wasn't too much. So during the time that we had traveled to Michigan, I liked this little town called Holland, Michigan. It's a nice small community. I said, I'm going to bring my children up here. I'm going to raise a family here. So one day, get home here in Austin, told my then wife, I said, we're going to Michigan today. Pack it up. At a 1959 Chevrolet Impala, four-door hardtop, packed everything I owned with $117 in my pocket and headed north. Of course, gasoline was like 18 cents a gallon, 25 cents a gallon for the better grade gasoline.
Yeah.
I'd had enough money. I knew people up there. My family knew people, and we had friends up there. So I made it up there in the middle of the week. So they said, well, we have an apartment upstairs that you can rent for $35 a month. But there's people that are moving out. So as soon as they move out, you guys can move up there. Okay. What are my skills? What skills do I have? Well, the skills that I brought with me were the skills that I learned in high school. I learned to become a welder. So went looking for a job. Had a job starting Monday morning, making $2.50 an hour as a welder.
Sounds like a lot in those days.
Anything over 8 hours a day was time and a half.
Right.
Imagine that. It was during the time that we were in the space race, if you recall that.
Yeah, early 60s.
Yes.
So what gave you the idea about police?
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
So I was a welder for about 9 months. In the community that I lived in, there were Puerto Ricans, people from Texas that came and stayed, and people that were there. It's a small Hispanic community. Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Texans lived there. They knew I could speak English pretty well. So they come to me and said, hey, the police department's going to hire 5 police officers, and we want you to be one of them. I looked at that, are you crazy? I weigh 135 pounds soaking wet. And you think I'm going to do this look at the size of these people. These Dutch people are pretty big guys. You can do it. This was like in June of 1968. So, June, school was going to start in September. July, August. So you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. See what happens. So I applied, and I got accepted. They did a background. I passed. We're going to send you to school to become a police officer. For the next 16 weeks, I became a police officer, trained well, learned everything you needed to learn about being a police officer. Graduated in December of 1968, commissioned in Michigan. I'm 21 years old. I'm about this big around, but I'm going to give it a shot because there was an opportunity for me to do something different. Get up off your feet and get up off your knees. Let's go. I gave it 150%. I graduated at number 2 of the class, physically, scholastically, because that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to be the first one. I was the first Hispanic to be commissioned in that city. Could speak English and Spanish at the same time, or bilingual. And that's what drew me into law enforcement. The wife that I took, I was up there for 10 years. The wife that I took up there with me and had 2 more children up there. I had 3 total. The time was coming that, we would come to Texas and spend 2 weeks. People get a little impatient and they want to come home. I bought 2 houses, had a brand new car every other year. I was living a good life because I knew what it tasted like and I liked it. But yes, came back to Texas in 1975, in the summer of '75, and I said I'll be back in a week. Told the wife and the kids I'll be back in a week. Came to Austin and I had 3 jobs in 1 week that I could start. One of them was Southwestern Bell as a lineman. The other one was as an installer with Southwestern Bell. And the third was with the Sheriff's Department because I had prior experience. So I took the Sheriff's Department. Talked to the sheriff in 1975. And he says, when can you start? I said, sir, I've got the family up in Michigan and I'll be back in 2 weeks. He said, you got a job.
So it was sheriff's deputy?
I was a sheriff's deputy, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a uniformed deputy.
In Travis County.
So, went home, packed up the house, sold the house and everything that I had and hooked up whatever I wanted to bring back and came back to Texas. Got here on a Wednesday or Thursday. Sunday night I had to go to work at 11 o'clock. Starting 11 to 7 shift. I don't know if you've ever been out around Austin, out in the country at 11 o'clock at night. There ain't nothing out there. The only thing that was active was Bergstrom Air Force Base. We had an active Air Force base back then. And everything after 12 o'clock closed down. And your job was to patrol. I had everything east of 35 all the way to the Bastrop County line. Everything south of the river to Caldwell County, past Creedmoor. So one guy, me. And learn how you protect yourself. You learn how to survive. So working out in the county, you encounter a lot of people. I used to stop and talk to a lot of people, more than patrol. I would get invited to dinner, coffee, tea. People wanted to be friendly with you because they wanted you in their neighborhood. And there were many, many neighborhoods that I had to patrol. I was on the street for about 14 months. And then one day I get called into the chief's office. And the chief says, well, the sheriff wants to see you. I said, uh-oh. So he says, chief says, well, I had just finished the shift at 3 o'clock. I was in uniform. And he says, mister, he said, you're out of uniform. I said, I've got 2 boots on. I've got pants on. I've got a shirt on. He said, you're out of uniform. Scared me to death. I thought I was getting fired.
Okay.
He said, you've been promoted to detective.
Okay.
Come back Monday morning, put your car in the shop, get your radio installed, and we'll pay you mileage, and you can work out of your car.
And you can dress like that? Or
street clothes.
Street clothes.
Street clothes.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. That was it. There's not that we're going to send you to detective school for 2 weeks or a month. None of that. I was assigned to the burglary detail. And now my job was to work people that had been burglarized. I became good at it, if I say so myself.
Right.
Not to brag, but I became pretty good at it.
So homes and businesses?
Anybody that got burglarized out in the county. Businesses, homes, yes. New homes where people would steal the material at night.
Right.
It's your job to find it. A lot of the homes that had been burglarized were out in the rural area. It's a lot easier. There's nobody patrolling out there, not like it is in the city. And it's a lot harder to catch these folks. But once you caught one, you could wrap up 15 burglaries.
Because would it be, you catch that one and it's a ring?
No, he would be responsible for about 15.
Oh.
And sometimes you got lucky. More often than not, I got pretty lucky. And because, you start to use something called the confidential informant in your business. I had a few that they would, it's give and take kind of thing. Hey, he needs a few bucks for his gasoline, or he needs new tires, or for his car. You'd find him. You'd find a place to get him, and you'd help him out. Then, of course, in turn, he'd help you out. Makes your job a lot easier. But he had been charged with a crime. This guy that I had been charged with burglarizing an automobile out in the rural. People in this club caught him, and they held him for me. So I went over and picked him up. On the way in, we start talking. So I helped him out, and of course, in turn, he helped me out. Because a lot of the things I was looking for were going through what they call fences. People that buy stolen merchandise.
Right.
And then they have a little yard sale in front of their house, and that's how the thing gets filtered back into the community. Because when you buy a television, or you buy, back then it was CB radios and all those things, you can't do anything but you can't eat it, you can't save it, so you want to sell it and make a profit because you bought it cheap. Guns were the big thing, televisions, CB radios. And that's how I got started into the burglary detail. From there, I was with the sheriff's office for about 5 years. And then, I was always looking for the next step up. The Attorney General of Texas was creating a new unit. And they were looking for investigators. So I applied. It's a Medicaid fraud unit funded by the government. I didn't even know what Medicaid was. My job was to investigate the Medicaid providers, doctors, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, anybody providing a service to a doctor who then provided it to the recipient. In that, of course, I got hired, and we had jurisdiction all over the state of Texas.
Right.
I mean, we could be in El Paso for the whole week working a case, or we could be in Brownsville working a pharmacy or nursing home. And I got to see a lot of misery in the nursing homes.
Yeah.
Pharmacies. I worked a case up in Fort Worth with the federal government. I became a federal agent. Testified before a federal grand jury, got an indictment. I had like 200 counts against this one pharmacist on the federal side. The prosecutor says, well, Judge, I'm not going to try him 200 times. Each one of the line items was a count. Either $250,000 fine or 25 years in prison. He said, I'm not going to do that. I'll take 2 or 3 and we'll go with that. And we did. The guy got convicted. It took me 2 years to do that case by myself up in Fort Worth.
Right.
Working in the basement of the federal courthouse in Fort Worth. He got 10 years in prison, did 18 months, and he was out practicing pharmacy again.
Wow. Jeez.
There's justice somewhere.
Yeah.
So I was there for 10 years with the AG's office. I was going to every school, training.
What was with the AG's office, what was your title? Just
fraud investigator.
Fraud investigator. Okay.
Medicaid fraud investigator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because the state administers Medicaid with
it comes from the federal government as a lump sum in the DHS, Department of Human Resources, and they dole it out. Then you've got a person that fills out the claims. Clayton Williams, I don't know if you remember that name, you probably don't.
No.
Clayton Williams had contracted with the state of Texas to provide claim services for the Medicaid service. In other words, the doctor would then file a claim. He would send it to Clayton Williams Company. Clayton Williams would then bill the government, and the government would take it out of what the amount of money that they got. It's a lot of hands, a lot of money passing hands. So I did that for about 10 years. To take as much training as possible.
Right.
Then I went to the district attorney's office here in Travis County. I was out one day, and then I get this. Back then, you used to have these pagers. I was out at an auction. Somebody had confiscated a bunch of little goats, cabrito size.
All right.
And I'm bidding on these little rascals, and I'm looking at, okay, I get a page from a friend of mine who was with the State Board of Pharmacy investigators. He was a chief investigator. He says, hey, I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm busy. Of course, he paid me to call him, so I called him. I said, what do you want? He said, well, I got a friend of mine over at the DA's office. I said, oh, good. He said, what's that have to do with me? He says, well, he says, I want you, I'll give him your name. I said, why? I'm not looking for a job. He said, just go talk to him. All right, this was on a Friday. I said, I'll go talk to him Monday. He said, you're not going. I'm going to call and make an appointment for you. And he did. He says, bring your resume. Okay. So Monday morning, about the afternoon, 2 o'clock, show up at the DA's office. I'm here to see the chief investigator because I knew everybody. All the guys from the PD would go over to the DA's office and put another 10 years in and get another paycheck. So I knew everybody there. So, I get welcomed. Chief investigator comes out. He says, I'm going to kind of introduce you to all the different divisions within the office. Back then, we had about 125 lawyers in the DA's office. Each one of them had a court, either criminal court, civil court, family court, juvenile court. So did that for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we stopped. He said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" Tuesday. I said, "What time?" He said, "About the same time." I said, "Okay." Came back the next day. He said, finished the tour. Wednesday, he said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" I said, "For what?" "For what?" He said, "The DA wants to talk to you." What time? He said, "Same time." Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon, I show up, and I walk into this huge office in the corner. There's the DA himself, the elected official. He got little reading glasses on. He's looking over my resume. He says, "I'm pretty impressed with his resume." I said, "Well, thank you, sir." I said, "It took me a long time to get it like that, but I'm glad you like it." He said, "When can you come work for me?" "Excuse me?" He says, "When can you come work for me?" "Well, sir," I said, "I'm not looking for a job." He said, "I didn't ask you that."
Okay.
What are you going to say?
Right.
He says, I said, "Well, how much does the job pay?" He said, "I'll tell you what." He said, "You go talk to the chief investigator, and whatever you guys can figure out, if you can come to an agreement, I'm good with that." It's 1981. 1981. Okay. So he and I discussed the salary, and I signed on. This is in June of 81. He said, "When can you start?" November the 4th or 14th, somewhere in there in the middle of the month. He said, "Okay, we'll hold it for you." Because I had a company that I owned.
Right.
I said, I'll be here in November." He said, "Okay." What does that tell you? They want you to come work for them.
Yeah.
So I did that for 18 and a half years.
Working for the
the DA.
district attorney. And it was the district attorney's office? It wasn't always the same guy, right?
Well, it was the same guy.
It was the same guy?
Yes. He was there for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a legislator when he first got out of law school, and he got elected to DA and stayed till he finally retired and passed.
That was City of Austin?
Travis County.
Travis County. Okay. And he, and were you a fraud investigator there or just criminal?
Well, I was a criminal investigator.
Yeah.
I had to recertify back as a police officer.
Okay.
As an AG investigator, I was just an investigator, non-commissioned. So you have to be commissioned by the state of Texas to become a police officer. There's a license and a commission. You have to have so many hours that you actually work on, do 40 hours a week to hold your commission. In some department, some law enforcement department has to hold your license and commission. Okay? There's a regulator. There's a state agency that regulates all that.
Right.
Everybody has to have basically the same training, so we're all on the same page.
Right.
Nobody's more or less. But you can have specialized training. So I was there for, like I said, 18 and a half years. I started in the trial division with 4 attorneys and 1 investigator, me. We would set up for a trial every 2 weeks, a jury trial. I did that for about 2 years, year and a half. Then I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to see what each division was, because what my intention was to do is to find out how the DA's office works. The only way you're going to find out is get inside the belly of the beast and find out how it works on the inside. You know what the outside looks like, but how does the inside work? How does the evidence get introduced into court? How do these lawyers practice? What do they do? And you get inside of them.
Were there, in all those 18 years, were there trafficking cases, kidnapping cases?
There was all kinds of cases.
All kinds of cases.
As an investigator for the DA's office, I would go back out into the community, the Hispanic community over on the east side.
And you're plain clothes, right? Okay.
It's even better. After about 5 years there, I decided to grow a ponytail. There's a guy with a suit on, got a nice dark suit, a red tie, and a white shirt with a ponytail. The thing was about to the middle of my back.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, if girls can have long hair, men can too. So I would pull it back. I said, as long as it's neat and clean, you can have one. It's the only person ever went through that office with that on. During that time, I became a juvenile investigator, investigating juvenile crime, juvenile gangs, that kind of stuff. So then you get into the community.
Right.
And you see all of these. This is where we're going back to what I was saying about people had a garage and converted that garage into sleeping quarters for these illegal aliens or aliens that came into this country because they were making money off of these folks. Yes, I had cases like that. I had cases where these guys would go into these bars because they know what bars to go into. They know, they talk. There's down on 183 and 973 in East Austin, right behind Bergstrom, or the airport, there's a flea market out there. This is how people communicate with each other. They if you see some of the cities in Mexico, for instance, there's a plaza in the middle of town. There's a church, and there's this little, but everybody comes to the playa, and they sit and talk. What goes, and this is how news travels. Who's where? What happened? Is he back? Is he sending you money? This is how it works. There's a underlayer, there's an underbelly of society that we don't know about, unless you're in law enforcement, because you deal with them.
You said the word underworld. It's like an undercurrent.
It's a very, it's like a river under.
Yeah.
We see the river on top, but there's a current under here that's even stronger because they want to come here because they see a better life. They can make $1,000 a week working construction for 7 days. Landscaping, there's some of the landscapers, they have 3 or 4 people working with them, especially when you have an HOA that everybody has to have their yard cut. These guys are making a fortune, and they know a good thing because they get paid $40-50 a yard. But they put 2 guys in there, and the faster you get it done, the faster you get paid. So, what do you do with all that money? Well, you got to send it home to somebody. I have a friend of mine here in Austin. He crossed the border illegally. He is now a multimillionaire because he was able to use his training in Mexico, to be able to build a business here. Very lucrative business. Good friend of mine.
Yeah.
But going back to, people feed off of the people that are here because they don't know any better. Just like I was telling you before, that this painting company that came to me because he'd been gypped or cheated out of $13,500. Why do people do that? Because they think they can get away with it. If I hire you to paint a building and it costs you $15,000 and you give me a check on a closed account, you know what you're doing.
Right.
What is, you're hoping that this doesn't go any further than that. Because when they keep calling you and asking, where's my money? You block their calls. You figure it's over. But it's not over. When they come looking for people like, after I left the DA's office, I said, well, maybe I can serve the community somewhere. My late wife had a private investigation agency. So one day I was a criminal investigator for the DA's office, the prosecuting company office, and then the next day I was a private investigator working for the defense. For the next 20 years, I did that.
Wow.
And just last July, I closed up the company.
Oh, okay. I thought you were still doing that.
I am, but under another.
Oh.
See, I can still do that.
Right.
You have a license, but you can hire as many people as you want. So I come under your license, and I can do my thing
I
still.
see. Okay.
Okay, so that's what I do. I'll pick and choose now. I don't have to do, because I'm doing about 40 cases a month.
Wow.
Yeah, I had another
To me, that sounds like a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Because you got people pulling from different directions. The furthest case that I had was from Australia. And then the other one, I had one from Japan.
Okay.
This poor guy in the army, right? He's in the army band, stationed in Japan. He gets on the internet. He's lonely. He gets on the internet, found him a little honey in Texas. Based on the fact that he was in the army, Killeen, Texas, is got the largest military army base in the world. So he gets online with this woman who says that she's a nurse, army nurse, a lieutenant in the army, and she's a nurse. And they start talking. She wants a 1-carat diamond ring, an airplane ticket to go see him in Japan that he has to pay for before she can go. So the guy gets to thinking, oh man, wow. So he's getting enough courage and enough money together, but then he calls out, he calls us out, said, hey, you guys are in Austin, can you go check on this for me? Okay. What do you want? He said, well, I want to see if she's a real nurse. Here's their address. So my partner and I drive up to Killeen. She lives in a trailer with her husband and a big German Shepherd in the front yard. Oh. So then I had a friend of mine who was a constable, elected constable up there, said, hey man, I'm looking for any information on this woman. But let me run a background on her, see what happens. So he did. The woman was currently serving time in the next county over for hot checks. So I said, can you get me a booking photo? She had no teeth.
Oh my gosh.
Looked like a meth head. So I get a picture, a booking photo, and I send it to the guy in Germany, or in Japan.
Yeah.
I said, hey man, here you go.
Right. Well, good thing he contacted you before he...
Just imagine.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
Right.
I mean, he was looking to spend $5,000 to $7,000 by the time it was all over, and she would have never showed up.
Right.
No.
And then he'd be out
She was
that money. And
she was still married.
yeah.
Where's she going to go? So he says, you know what? This is the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah. Do people, the traffickers, ever use the internet or dark internet?
There's just like drug dealers, there's a certain language that they use. But it's not about the internet. You've got 6 or 7 girls, women, you need to move them out. Because them sitting there is not making you any money. So you farm them out to sell, you sell them. It's like cattle.
So you're literally selling human beings.
Slavery.
Slavery.
Coming across, they promised somebody on the other side a certain amount of money. They gave them money.
Yeah.
But they still owe money. You have them. They owe you money. So how are you going to get your money if you don't put them to work?
Right.
So they become either mules, drug mules, prostitutes. I'm not saying that as a general rule. Housemaids, babysitters, you name it. They all have a little business. But with this new immigration law, that new immigration that's happening, everybody's scared to death. What are we going to do now? They'll find a way. You know, how does fentanyl get here? It doesn't fall from the sky. Thousands and thousands, I think it's 100,000 human beings are dying every year from fentanyl poisoning. You see that posters everywhere.
Right.
It comes across in a backpack. Big business.
So the trafficker really makes a lot of money in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
They traffic women, for instance, as mules to carry drugs over. And then once those women are here, they can use them for the babysitting, the nanny, the prostitution, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's multiple ways of making money off them.
You want to make your money back plus profit.
Yeah.
And they just become property. You know, people say, well, you know, slavery ended years ago. No, it didn't. You're still being held by somebody and owned by somebody.
See, then that right there, I mean, your testimony, your experience, most people don't have any idea of that. That this.
They don't want to know. They don't want to know. They're not going to say, well, can you give me a criminal history on this gal before we hire her? Where are you going to get the information from? Where she came from? If she came over here without any papers, any documentation, what are you going to find out? How long have you been in the country? 10 years. Really? Where'd you start? They know a little bit of English, not much. The reason they call me is because they don't understand the law as a private investigator.
Right.
And they're stuck. They have a business or some kind of a business. But you know, and I can only assume that you know, I'm using that term loosely. But you figure out that it's all about the money. That's all it is. It's business. It's nothing personal.
Right.
But the money goes back to somebody, either in cash. But how much cash can you have at home that you could spend? Where are you going to bury it in a building? Money rots.
Cash, I'm thinking of money laundering. If someone is paid in cash to hire out these women to be whatever, babysitters or prostitutes or whatever, and they're receiving cash, does that cash have to be laundered?
No.
No.
Who's going to know about it?
Because you have no idea.
Because your handler is going to take the cash from you in a club. Okay, you owe me $10,000 for you being here, and I charge you rent for that room you sleep in. So how are you going to get out? How are you going to get out of this race? How are you going to get out of this prison that you're in? You can't, unless you run. Remember the old days of the pimp?
Yeah.
Put the girls out. You watch them. Did they control their money? No. They took it to the pimp because he bought them clothes. He had them gave them a place to sleep, food to eat, and that's it. That was their life. Same thing. What's the difference?
So it's like we have to make sure we understand what the word slavery really means. I think of it in terms of labor, where your labor is controlled by somebody else.
Your life is controlled by somebody else.
Your life, your whole life.
The whole thing. Can I send some money to my family in Mexico? Or Nicaragua or Guatemala? You know, something. Maybe. You know, we have a lot of people from Cuba that come to this country. They come by way of Mexico. And they still send money to Cuba. Billions of dollars goes into foreign countries from here. How are you going to stop it? Southwestern Union? AT&T? Send them cards, credit cards, anything that has value to it.
Right.
It's got to have a value to it. Your body, a young woman 15 to 25 years old, has value to me because I can make my money back. I don't see any problem with that. But she has no control over anything at all. I'm telling you what time you get up. And then, of course, you involve in drugs in the clubs.
Right. So mentally, they're may not be all there, or in their right mind.
What choices do you have?
Yeah.
Somebody says to you, you can't leave the room. But you've grown used to being able to come and go as you please.
Mm-hmm.
But when they bring you from another country to here, you have no idea what's on the outside.
Right.
Who do I go to that I can trust to get me out of this slavery?
Right.
I use the term slavery. It's not loosely because that's what it is. It's not like she can set up her own apartment. It's not like she can bring her children. It's none of that.
So it's probably safer to stay in this trap you're in, this cage, basically, because you're familiar with it and you're fed, as opposed to going into the outside world, like you said, where you don't know what's out there.
Right. Are you going to get deported? Because there's always a threat that I have you here. If you don't pay me, I'm going to take it out on your family over there.
Whether that's true or not, the
In
threat,
your mind,
yeah.
what's it going to tell you? What's it going to tell you?
Right.
If you walk out that door, I'm going to shoot you. Are you going to walk out that door?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right.
No, you're going to stay right here and mind your own business.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. So is there a difference? No.
Right.
The term slavery, of course, we go back to the slaves in the early 1800s. In Texas, it was not a slave state.
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana, along the Mississippi, because of the production of cotton. But that's the slavery that we see. It's a different form but the same thing. Sex trade, drug trade, money laundering. And the ironic thing is that people that come from different countries that set up shop here also take advantage of their own people. They cheat them.
Right.
They take advantage of them. They control them. They control their money. Because we're living under the shadow of the American life. They're not going to enjoy the American dream.
Right.
They have a culture of their own, and they bring it with them. When you see demonstrations, you see people waving the Mexican flag.
Mm-hmm.
They've never been to Mexico. They can't even speak Spanish, but they're Mexicans.
Right.
People ask me, says, "Are you a Mexican?" I'm an American. Doesn't make me any better. My heritage is from Mexico because Texas was part of Mexico long before it became part of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I was already here before you got here.
Right.
I have heritage. I pass it on to my kids, my grandkids. So, when somebody says, "Oh, he's an American because he's white," I said, "Oh, how do you know he's an American?" "Well, he's white." "Well, is he from Germany, Europe? Is he from Asia? Where is he from?" "Well, I don't know, but he's an American because he's white." "And what am I?" "Well, you're Mexican."
Right.
And then the argument starts.
Wow. Yeah, for those of us who are free, who can come and go as we please, travel, not travel, stay in one place, to hear that there are people living in actual slavery who don't have any of those things, that's pretty shocking.
It's out there. But see, here again, I don't want to know I don't want to know where she came from.
Yeah.
I don't care is the other thing. But you should care. They're human beings.
Right.
But you're right. Yeah, like I said, there's an undercurrent of that kind of life here in Austin. Yeah. Where do you think they get the when you're building an apartment complex, roof, plumbing, the contractor goes out to a contractor. He hires whomever he wants that can do the job and pay him what he wants to pay him. But they don't speak English. But I have a foreman that can speak Spanish and English. And that's how we communicate these things. In the old days, when they had programs like that, there used to be a program in 1954 called the Bracero program.
I've heard of that.
And they would hire the Mexicans from Mexico, or out there they would apply to come to the U.S. for 6 months to pick, work in the fields, and then after that they would go back home. There's still a program here in Austin. It'll happen in the spring, where you see these guys pushing the ice cream carts. They're all contractors from Mexico, and they'll come sell ice cream just to come here for 6 months. But you've got to come legally if you want to live here. You want to become part of the American dream. Come the right way.
Right.
They'll open their arms for you. There's Statue of Liberty's out there in New York Bay or in the Hudson River doing that. But don't come here pushing your way into the country and expect me to support you. I need to support me. You bring your way of life. It's not a good thing. As a police officer, you're going to do something about that, because it's your duty as a police officer and as a human being. Why are these people being treated like slaves? But see, the people know. They can see you, and they can see me, and they can see somebody from their country, and they know darn well we don't belong here. They don't belong here. Don't talk to him.
So all of these jobs, aside from the prostitution, that people come here to do, labor, housekeeping, that can all be done through the legal system, right?
There's companies. But see, there's companies that send out these maids, okay? Maid services.
Right.
I guarantee you we could drive up to the, I could take you to a place right now that we can drive up there and talk to these women. None of them are speaking English. Do they check their labor status? No. They don't want to know. They don't want to know. Who's making the money? They are? No.
Right.
So is it fair to them? They're trying to make a living, and they do. And they're working as maids. They'll send 3 or 4 maids into one house, and boom, done. Go on to the next one. They'll do 3 or 4 houses a day. But they wear these little uniforms. They drive them. I don't even think they've got a driver's license, because you can't get a driver's license in Texas without a birth certificate. So how do they drive? They don't have a Social Security card.
They could use fake documents or stolen. They use
Yes.
stolen. Yeah.
That's always a plus. They go to the flea markets and get these, looks like a driver's license, made right there.
Wow. I think in Texas we have the barcode on the back.
Yes, they do.
So did they fake a barcode? Or?
Everything, except there's a little star on the driver's license, on the face of the driver's license, that's issued by the state of Texas. They can make it look really good.
Yeah.
But see, as I've seen in the news, where people get to the border and they drop all of their IDs on the other side. They come here with nothing.
It's like on purpose, right?
I don't want you to know who I am.
Yeah.
But the only thing that doesn't change is their fingerprints.
Right.
If you're fingerprinted somewhere in the world, it goes in a data bank.
Well, I could imagine most people are not fingerprinted.
Have you ever been fingerprinted?
Yes, when I got my driver's license here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You put your fingerprint down, didn't you?
Right.
Yeah. Before that, never been fingerprinted?
I don't think so.
Were you ever in the military?
No.
No. Were you ever in any kind of government service?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So you see, people like you are free. They're clean. See, have you ever been arrested?
No.
No. Okay. So you're good.
I'm being questioned here. It's okay. It's all right.
You see how quick that went the other way?
Yeah. Right. All right. Wow. That's what that feels like.
Yeah. He's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Don't ask me too many questions. But it's a natural thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're standing somewhere in line and you hear people talking in Spanish.
Mm.
Or you're standing somewhere in line at a happy hour somewhere in a bar. People talking about, you hear all these things. And you're processing.
Mm.
You're processing these things. And it becomes it's just a habit. But see, in 1968, I was fingerprinted. In Michigan, you had to apply for a gun permit. Okay?
Mm.
You couldn't buy a gun, just go to the gun store and buy one. You had to get a permit from the police department, and they run a background check on you, and they give you the permit to go buy the gun. You bring it back and you register the gun with the police department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then you can carry it. Not carry it, but have it in your car, in the trunk. The ammunition and the gun in two different places.
Right.
Okay? So I was fingerprinted back in 1967. I've been fingerprinted ever since for every government job that I've ever had, even as a private investigator. I had to get fingerprinted. So my fingerprints are everywhere. I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, your driver's license. See, with the DA's office, I also did undercover work. And I had a new name,
Mm-hmm.
and a new birth certificate, bank accounts, credit cards, Social
Wow.
Security card,
Wow.
the driver's license.
So this role you played as an undercover.
Yep.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've worn a lot of hats,
Right.
put it that way.
Yeah. So you're a real life private eye.
Mm-hmm.
My first one who I ever met with a long history of police work and investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate you coming in to talk. I hope people enjoy the conversation, and I continue to learn. I thought I knew stuff, but I'm just having my mind blown with each person I talk to. So, any parting words? Any words of wisdom for people out there?
We are a nation of of laws. Just follow the law. If you have any questions, if it doesn't smell good, don't do it. Because a lot of people, well, if it feels good, go ahead and do it. No. Because going back to fentanyl, these young people are cashing in at the age of 16, 15, 14, because their friends said, go ahead and take it.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy. I was glad. I've had situations where I grew up in the east of Austin where you had people, no, here, try this. No. I'm not doing that. But it was a time where you came from a certain part of Austin. I came from Montopolis. And it was a poor neighborhood. Our first house in Montopolis was $2,000. They cut a road, built little track houses, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, and 1 bathroom. That was it. There were 6 kids in that house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we had to learn how to survive.
Right.
So, but to get this far without ever going to jail, in prison,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even tell you when the last time I received a speeding ticket. I'm not going to look.
Right.
But, you're able to climb out of that into a better life. I'm retired, semi-retired, and, I own my own house. I have some investments that I do pretty well.
Okay.
So there is hope.
Yeah.
If I can do it, you can do it.
I like that. That's a good note to end on.
Yeah, so. And one more thing is that my oldest son just retired from U.S. Customs Service. He was a ICE agent for 20 plus years. So it's out there for you. I had a brother that was also with the sheriff's office that passed away. So it's, live the good life. It's out there for you. Educate yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. It's not easy. You got to work hard. And people say, well, you work hard. What do you have? Everything you see is mine.
Right.
And you have enough for your children when you pass. And we're not going to live forever.
Right.
But enjoy what you have and live life to the fullest, because nobody's promised you tomorrow.
I'm with you on that, Joe. I'm with you on that. I really appreciate you coming in.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. And,
Sure.
We're just, like I said, we just kind of skated over this thing. But if you ever
Well,
want to go,
maybe you can come back at some point and we
if
can
you ever
go
want to
further.
if you ever want to go with me, we'll go down to the flea market.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you'd get a feel for this thing.
Right.
And how certain groups of people find each other. Because if somebody was to drop you in the middle of Mexico, what was the first thing you'd be looking for? Tell me.
A phone.
No, you had no phone. What was the first thing you'd be looking for?
Probably water.
No. People that look like you and speak like you.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then you can communicate, hey, how do I get out of this hole?
Right.
Same thing when people come here. They all find their little niche. They're all villages, their own little villages. And you'll see that the different things that people sell, services that they offer, things that they do. If you ever want to go to that, there's a couple of them.
Okay.
I think you'd see Austin in a different light.
All right. I'm up for that. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.